Hi, good night, everyone. Welcome to Dlp Tv Youth Vibe Edition. I am your hostess tonight. My name is Melissa Howard, and with me tonight will be Gabrielle Rock and Terry-Ann Reed. Our theme for tonight will be Woman, Mother of Our Nation, Bearer of Life. Now, we recently had International Women's Day last week, Saturday, and when we think of the word woman, certain characteristics automatically come to mind. Creator of life, nurturer, teacher, provider, wife. So my question is, what does the phrase mother of our nation, bearer of life mean to you? And how does it capture the most multifaceted contributions of women in today's society? You can start.
Good night to everyone listening and watching. When I heard the theme, I automatically thought of women being multifaceted people within our communities. The idea of bearer of life, we tend to be associated automatically with a biological motherhood. But the reality is that we as women oftentimes contribute to persons' lives in so many different ways. And especially in Barbados, in a very matriarchal society where we can think of so many women within our communities that would have contributed to our lives. So when I think of that theme, I think not just of the mothers and the grandmothers, but I think of the aunts who are not actually related to us, the teachers who played a role in our lives, and just the women within our communities that molded us into the people that we are today.
Mentors. Yeah, yeah.
So in terms of the mother of our nation, I see it as we all would have went through a woman. So the first person before we even breathe was our mother, right?
Yeah.
So even as she carries the child, how her well-being is, if she's happy and she's eating well, that can affect the growing child. And as the child grows more, then likely it's going to be a healthy child, right? And if that is true, that means that if the mother is stressed, then that can also affect the child. And if the child continues to be raised in an unhealthy, unhappy environment, then
it affects the child negatively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then in turn, it will also affect the nation because each child had to be raised by somebody, and the nation then could be
life cycle.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right, there's a famous Bible scripture from Proverbs 31, verses 10 to 31. And this scripture describes a woman in great detail. It lays out that a woman is one who has faith in God. She's a faithful wife. She's mother. She takes care of her mental, physical, and spiritual health. A woman who gives of service, a provider, a professional, a homemaker, a woman who embraces her beauty and gives of her time. So this sounds like a superwoman. And when we look at these characteristics, and I look at myself, I fall short of what this woman is supposed to be. So while recognizing women as life bearers, how do we ensure that this powerful role is seen as one aspect of their identity and not the sole measure of their value?
I think when we think of the woman that has been outlined, it really is the ideal woman. It is something to aspire to, but it gives us these roadblocks and these benchmarks to say these are individual goals for ourselves. I think within our society, sometimes it can also be very difficult to achieve every single one of those aspects.
Definitely.
Because life pulls us in so many different directions. I think the society now is so unbalanced, and it requires us, because there's so much happening now, it's hard for a woman to be able to focus on just being that type of woman, because there's so many requirements outside of outside of the home, if that woman would have had a privilege that we probably don't have now. And I don't see us actually having that comfort to be able to focus on those things.
So my question to you, do you think that right now this particular type of woman is impossible to achieve?
I wouldn't say impossible. I would say that it takes a lot of effort, but that requires a lot of effort, not just from the woman, but it requires a lot of effort from the entire family around her. So it requires that woman was also supported by a man who was fulfilling his role according to biblical expectations.
Mm-hmm.
It was also a society that was fulfilling its role according to those expectations. Mm-hmm. And right now, the society is not fulfilling those roles. And it's not easy to find men who are fulfilling biblical expectations or even any religious expectations, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
So,
but even outlining these things just now, do you think that us as women fulfill our roles?
Sometimes no. But I think it's a push and pull. Mm-hmm. Because everybody's out of balance. It's hard for both people to fulfill those specific roles. But then you also have to ask the question, is it fair to expect that in this time? Because the demands on everyone has severely changed. So it is, well, it might be attainable. It is very difficult. And most families will not be able to manage creating the environment to allow that woman to thrive in the way that she's expected to thrive biblically.
Okay, out of all these characteristics, which will be the most difficult one to achieve?
I'm not sure. I think I'm going to think about that for a minute.
I'd like to say that when I first read the Proverbs 31 woman, I was, in my head, I was wondering who could possibly
do all these things.
That she was working and she was also taking care of the home and she was making things and selling things. It's like literally the perfect woman and she's busy all the time, right? And how I took it was that there are going to be some people, some women who are housewives and who are going to be good in that. And then there are also women who also are good entrepreneurs and they may not have children. Even if they're married, it might be a choice. They may not want to have children. But yet I look at and see kind of the personality that she has. She's just hardworking, and she cared about her family, and she made sure that everybody was good. And I think we could just look at it that way. If she doesn't have a business, but she has those qualities that can apply, and if she's a businesswoman, she's not married, she has those qualities, then she's still nurturing. So that's how I kind of look at it, because it was like, that is so, I kind of feel impossible. Not that it's not possible, but just kind of feel it's hard to face.
I think too, like back then, people were existing in a capitalist system where we were fighting. We literally had to fight just to live. It's so expensive just to live. So when women are taking up entrepreneurial roles, you're looking at maybe like a 60-hour week. How are you managing a 60-hour week, or even sometimes a 40-hour week, managing the kids and really focusing on kids? And if you have multiple children, so it's a lot. And then you try to give them the best experience and the best chance to survive. That it becomes in itself expensive, and that demands more time from you professionally. And then it takes you away from the family even more. I don't know if it is very possible if we maintain the lifestyles that we live right now.
But we can look at our national hero, the only female right now that's alive, Rihanna. She's a businesswoman. She's a mother. She has a partner. She seems, close to achieving everything that's listed here in Proverbs 31.
Well, she's also a billionaire, and money buys you some level of freedom.
Yeah.
But when somebody's working 40 hours a week just to make $4,000, half of that is going to go towards maybe living expenses, like we're talking about groceries and bills.
Having to cook.
Exactly. And then you're going to have to think about the fact if you provide your children with great opportunities, and you can send your children through the public school system and things like that, but you will want to give your children advantages. If you choose to give your children advantages and you send them through the public school system, but you put them into extracurricular activities, that's another bill. And then you think about the fact that there are other expenses that a $4,000 paycheck is not really going to manage, especially with children. Having, of course, we're not necessarily talking about a single mother here, because in this situation, ideally, it would not be a single mother. We would ideally hope that she has the support of the father, and in the Bajan context, it's usually inclusive of the external family, grandparents and aunts. But it is, even with a decent paycheck, it's hard.
So you require the help of everybody, which brings us to the next point. We usually hear of the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. So we rely on our family members, our friends, persons in the communities, and sometimes you get professional help, babysitters, nurseries, etc. So in an era where women are stepping into diverse roles, from leaders in the workplace to community caregivers, how can society better support the balance between personal ambition and the nurturing qualities traditionally associated with simply being a woman?
So I would speak on this a little more personal.
That's fine. Yeah.
So I'm glad that, that we live in an era that we as women, if we choose to and have the opportunity to, we could be bosses, we could even be prime ministers, we could be anything, right? However, sometimes we as women do go through certain things, like if we are get pregnant. And for me personally, I had to deal with that time of the month not being the best time.
Okay.
And that's why I that's why I prefer to be self-employed, because I have my own time. I could work around my time, but it was difficult when I did have to work in a job, and that affected me. I'm gonna not be able to make it to work, and if I did go to work, I can't really do my work. And I think it helped me to find better alternatives than just medication. So I had to learn about a lot of herbs and oils.
Would you care to share what herbs and oils you were using?
First, I will say that I am not a medical
practitioner,
but what helped me was like castor oil, red raspberry leaf, tea, and ginger. Those things, I saw a big difference. And then they also used to have a lot of side effects from the medication I was taking. It affected me for years, right? So I feel like, in terms of your question,
you think you would need support? Some women would need support when they're on their menstrual cycle.
Yes, women would need support in that area.
What kind of support you're speaking about?
At least education, because this is something that I had to go and teach myself.
Okay.
Like, I would go to the doctor and be on medication, but when the medication gives me side effects, I didn't know what else to do. I still gotta go work, still gotta do stuff. So I had to find a way to better myself. And I just feel that there should be more about women's health and how to deal with that issue, especially if she has to survive, because not everybody's going to get married to a husband that can support her and she's going to go and worry about that. I think just need to be more education on that area.
Okay. So what do you think if employers were to offer at least, let me say, 2 days off, for persons that have bad menstrual cycles?
I think that'd be great.
Okay.
Well, we're not there yet, but it'd be great.
All right.
I agree because I experienced the same thing. I am also self-employed, and I found that helped a lot, being able to control my schedule as best as possible. If I know I'm not gonna book appointments during that time, I will book appointments, but I will book less or at specific times where I know that I can manage it, because it's not even just pain, and the pain is terrible. It's terrible, and healthcare does not seem to care, because most people don't seem to go through it. I guarantee if men had to go through crap, there would be a cure. But we have to go through it, and then we're expected to come to work, smile, be bright, and be excited. And if you come to work and you're miserable, then it's a problem.
Yeah, where should come work for? No?
Exactly. So I think if people are working within a normal work environment, the work environment could be a little bit more forgiving. My biggest concern is that sometimes employers tend to choose to hire someone else that may not have these issues.
So there's discrimination.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that brings another problem. But ideally, having a little bit more sensitivity as it relates to issues like that. Also understanding that I think we can also kind of control it to some degree for those of us who are self-employed by managing our schedules. But we can also think about alternative career paths. And this goes for women, and not saying that women should do this, and women should not be looking to have careers in regular 9-to-5 spaces. But for women who are looking for other options, and this goes back to not only the healthcare, but it goes to childcare and the flexibility of being able to take care of your children. There are other options. There are work from home jobs, and we saw that being something that worked during pandemic.
COVID, yeah.
And it seems as though people forgot that it actually kind of worked. So you have at least a little bit of flexibility. If you can say, I can put in my 8 hours, even if my 8 hours aren't throughout the day, I can put in my 8 hours and some hours at night and still get the job done. And that can help some women being able to take care of their children while maybe their partner is at work, and then their partner comes home. You may be able to take that shift. He may be able to take that shift, and you be able to start working on your job. Even other career paths where you are working in a different environment that allows you that flexibility. So it may not be a work from home job, so to speak, but it may be a job that allows you to make the amount of money that you would make in a regular 9-to-5, Monday to Friday job in a shorter space of time.
More flexibility.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not, ideally, we would love to see the workplace more inclusive and more sensitive towards issues that women experience. But we also can encourage women to pursue alternative careers,
Entrepreneurship path.
Yeah. Agriculture as well.
Yeah.
We can think about so many different fields that are not necessarily a 9-to-5.
Or 5 days a week.
Exactly.
Yeah. And let's take a look at crime. Many times when persons are murdered brutally and family members are being interviewed in the media, you will usually hear phrases like, "Oh, he was a good boy," or "I never see him giving trouble." And so a mother or a grandmother might see a gun in the house, might see the grandson or the son selling drugs, and they overlook it. They say nothing until something happens. So in a time when crime is on the rise, how can women as nurturers and community builders play a pivotal role in promoting safety and restoring trust with neighborhoods?
You want me to
Yeah.
answer? Honestly, the truth is, I guess we women or even men, we have to make sure we are watching our children
Mm-hmm.
and censoring what they're doing as well. In terms of the crime that's going on in Barbados currently, it wasn't as bad as it is now. I know, like I have a friend that she used to go out before, but she does not go out now because of all the crime that's happening. And I also had a cousin that had died from that kind of. Someone came to his house. He was at home, and someone came to his house and he got shot and died.
Mhm.
Right. And in these kind of cases, I just see it as you have to make sure that your child is as much as possible on the right path. And sometimes you just have to pray, because you gotta pray before you leave home, because you don't know what is gonna happen.
Yeah.
We're not in control of what will happen. And I try to say a prayer over my family and that everybody be safe, to come back home safe. Because we used to just say, getting safe, put you get home safe. But really and truly, no, you gotta really hope and pray to get home safe, right? Because you could be at the shop, somebody get shoot. Um,
But
trying to,
sometimes they say nothing because the individual is bringing money into the household. They're paying the bills.
but then
And
you
what's
can't
not?
pray. You can't. You see that, and then you okay with them in that lifestyle. You can't cry when they know in the lifestyle and get
And something bad happens.
yeah. So if as much as possible, I know things might be hard, but make sure that your child doesn't have to depend on drugs in order to survive in this society.
Okay, so how do you think we can achieve this? Because for some persons, is the only way for them, their last resort. They have nothing else to turn to. So are you going to suggest for these individuals?
Well, I am going to call on other organizations. I think that sometimes one of the big things that I have noticed is that young people always have a goal. You go to school with people, everybody has something that they want to do.
Mhm.
Somebody may want to be a teacher, a lawyer. Somebody may want to be in construction. People have these goals, aspirations, but somewhere along the line, and I think it really goes wrong around secondary school,
Yes.
just after puberty, just after puberty, because everybody seems to have their life good until puberty,
Until puberty, okay.
and then it all goes haywire. I think it is important that we catch them at that point, where we take those teenagers who are just about to be lost to the system.
Peer pressure?
Sometimes peer pressure. Sometimes it really is just that they're not succeeding in school. Like it could literally just be I'm struggling in school. And me personally, I was a great student until I went to secondary school. And I went to secondary school. I got through secondary school. You know, I got my CXCs and things like that. But I was not performing. I graduated primary school valedictorian, went to secondary school, and struggled. And my parents were like, I don't know, maybe it's just she's adjusting. Maybe just give her a chance. And I struggled. Like, I thought I was dumb because all my friends were doing well, getting straight A's, and I was barely scraping by. And I didn't know what was wrong. And it's only when I think I was 17. I left secondary school, got my CXCs and everything. But I will say that was very much because my mother was so firm with me. She made sure that I had access to lessons. Even if I didn't have it, she made sure that she got me to do my work. And I got my CXCs.
Okay.
I went to BCC and it was mandatory after the first semester that you have an academic counseling. And I sat down with the counselor and she asked me, we just sat and talked. I told her about my experience in primary school, and I was always chatty, always talkative, you know. They would always write on my reports, Taryn is a good student, but she talks
Too much. Still there.
I'm talking. But everybody at my primary school knew not to put me at a door or a window because I would not pay attention. I would stare out the window for the entire time. And every teacher knew as they passed me on, do not put her at the window. So I had a permanent seat right in front of the teacher. And they would also put me next to students who were struggling so that I would kind of help pull them along. But I was advanced, so I would always finish my work ahead of time. So my teachers would always have extra work to give me. Then I went to secondary school and struggled. I told all of this to my tutor, my counselor
Advisor.
Yes. And I remember I was telling her about an exam that I struggled in. It was a physics exam. And I remember looking at the clock, and I knew what to do for the question, but I was just trying to figure out the exact equation to put in.
Okay.
And I looked at the clock, and I remember seeing, I think it was like 10 past the hour. And I looked outside. I looked back at the clock. Literally. I'm telling you, I felt like I blinked. I looked back at the clock. It was 10 minutes to. I sat there for 40 minutes zoned out. And she when after, because I told her all about my experience throughout school, she said, I think you should be assessed for ADHD. And nobody at that point had caught that. 17 years of my life and no one caught that. And I thought I was dumb for about 7 years.
And it was simply just ADHD.
Simply that. And when I went to get assessed, I remember I didn't get assessed until I was 25.
Wow.
And I was struggling. I struggled at university, left university because I was struggling. And I just could not self-regulate. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back at this, but I need to get this assessment because I need to know if something is wrong. And I got the assessment, and
25 years later. But after going through this experience, what would you say would be the ideal age for this assessment to be done?
I think I don't want to say a specific age. I mean, I'm not a mental health professional, but I would say I do think that it's important that teachers are I think teachers are doing a better job at being educated on these issues now.
To identify it earlier.
Exactly. So we're talking, I was in primary school 20 years ago. So that was not a common thing. And the way that I presented, even when I went to get my assessment, the nurse was like, that doesn't sound like ADHD. And I was like, you wait, I have more. But they assume that ADHD is a child bouncing off the walls. But we also know that women present differently. Because girls can't bounce off walls because you're just going to be seen as a bad girl. We mask our symptoms. So we present very differently. So it is important that teachers are, I think we can start with having workshops with teachers from early so that they can identify it. Because if they can identify it, they can highlight it to social workers that come into the school. There are ministry professionals that will come into the school and do those assessments at your request and at the parents with the parents' consent.
Yeah.
But if teachers are very knowledgeable of that, we can catch those things early, help those children from early to not feel like they're dumb, to feel like if there is a possibility to succeed without having to resort to a life of crime, and you can actively pursue, you can go get a degree. If you don't want to get a degree, you can get a vocational certification, knowing that you aren't dumb. This is a reality. You can be successful. Giving them that fair shot. But sometimes the system really is not set for persons who are neurodivergent and have different learning styles. So identifying those issues from early, making sure that we catch those issues, and also catching issues at home. Like, some children just have traumatic lives, and you can see if you really go into some schools, even primary schools, and you see some of the things that some 8-year-olds are going through. You realize how privileged you are to just have the freedom to have been a child. And it's very difficult for a child who has started out life being abused, whether physically, sexually, emotionally, and these are things that are happening on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
They're automatically starting out life thinking that
That is over, basically.
What you said, I was seeing it in my time, right? When I was going to school, I was kind of the opposite. I didn't used to talk. People talk, so it was wrong. And I would be daydreaming. Like I had a whole scenario in my head, and I'm talking. Like if somebody's speaking, like somewhere else, right? And when in my time, because I'm in my 30s now, in my time, if somebody wasn't doing the work, and I also was not, I don't want to say smart, because I think it just had a focus issue.
Okay.
But if you don't get a certain amount of a percentage, they will just automatically say, oh, she's stupid, or she dumb, or he dumb, he's stupid.
So it builds your self-worth.
They're not,
Yeah.
yes, and they don't actually look into, well, at the time, I don't know if that's the case now, but at the time, they didn't look into seeing if child had a problem.
Yeah.
So I could have a problem and never checked. But and I think that if you think about it, many people in my age who might be mothers now might have had a problem but never checked, and then they don't know how to raise their child who also have
the same problem.
Because they don't even know what to
never
look
check.
for.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a interesting point to look at it, that maybe it could be that the parent themselves or my child making money from drugs, or them in care, them in thinking they might also not mentally be well, and their child might not mentally be well, is not solved. So certain things I think should be looked into from an early age in school. I don't know what's like, how would you know a child has ADHD?
Certain behavior patterns. Yeah.
You could tell from a child, like,
I think children start to show signs once they start to show. I think there's certain landmarks that you use to gauge children's development.
There's certain behavior patterns for every disease.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor. I don't know them, but if you're trained, you picked it up very easily.
That's why I said, we have to have that training. So even if it's not, they might not be, they can't diagnose them. It's a doctor's responsibility to diagnose them. But they can pick up those warning signs and say, well, look, I'm seeing this. Even like seeing like dyslexia, and you see some people will literally, you will see them write mirror image. And I know this because I have a relative that he went through that. He literally wrote mirror image. And because he did that, they knew to check for dyslexia. And he was able to get the care that he needed. But in his mind, he can literally read a mirror image sentence because that's what his brain was saying. And so many people have these little issues, but we don't pick them up because sometimes people think that they're dumb. And even just having different learning styles. I remember in school, I don't know if y'all experienced this. Did y'all line up for after lunch and do your tables?
Yeah, primary school. Yeah.
And
our early morning too. Yeah.
And I used to hate that because I never learned my timetables.
Okay.
I don't remember things, so I never learned my tables. So I always, every day I used to get beat.
So would you say that you are more a creative person?
No. I am a logical person, but I'm a problem solver. So I was very good at quick maths. So I had a teacher that would always be like, "Turn, you adding?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm adding, duh." Like I had certain landmarks where I would know. If you ask me what is 7 times 8, I know what 7 times 7 is, so I know how to add that there.
But you still didn't know your tables.
Up to now, I don't know my tables. I can tell you, I literally don't know my tables.
But you know that there's like a pattern. That's how I memorize it. There's a pattern to tables.
Yeah.
I said 5 times table is always gonna be ending with 5 and 0. But I don't want to hear about math. But yeah, there's all I found it fascinating how the tables always seem to have a pattern,
Yeah.
and that's how I learned it.
See, that's such a different thing because I just find the little things that I would remember. I would just find it and think, okay, so what do I have to do to get this next thing? But I've never been like that person. I remember even in school when my teacher asked me to put a question on the board, but it was a fraction. And I don't like adding fractions or dividing multiple fractions or something like that. And I thought, so I converted it to decimal. And the class started to laugh. And she said, stop laughing. She said, carry and continue. And when I finished, she was like, the answer is correct. But that's how I am. I don't necessarily do things the way that you expect me to do
Yeah.
it.
So it's not that you're dumb, you're probably very gifted.
But I don't.
I feel like in terms of school system, they make you perform. Yes,
For certain
you
methods.
have to think this
Yeah.
way.
Mhm.
You have to write down the answer. How did you get this answer
this
way?
particular way.
But some people have their own way of
Yeah.
working it out, you know,
Yeah.
and that's just in life in general.
Yeah.
Many different ways to one destination.
Exactly. So that's what's important about having having teachers that acknowledge different learning styles,
Mhm.
because you might have students that are gonna pick up on, you tell them this is this and they're gonna pick that up. I had that issue too when I was in college too. We had to write pre-labs, I couldn't write them. And my laptop would always ask me, Tarian, why do you always do this? Because you have to stay back like 20 minutes after everybody else leaves the lab.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I just can't understand it until I see the lab. And I was good at labs. Like you tell me set up a lab, especially circuits. If you tell me anything with electricity, I got it.
Mhm.
And he was like, you know what? You have a free period before? I said, I do have a free period. He was like, come 20 minutes before. And he would come and set up, give me all the things, set it up, leave me, and then he would come and check. He's like, okay, you got everything.
Yeah.
So what's the equation for it? And I would write down the equation, whereas everybody else could figure that out outside of actually seeing the physical lab set up.
But you think differently.
Exactly. So it's important that we have people that recognize this person doesn't really figure this out the same way.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're dumb. They're smart. They're just
They're thinking differently, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we can identify those little peculiarities with individuals, there's so many different people, and they have so many different skills. But some of them just get lost in the system. Of course, they're just going to be bad people. Let's be honest. They're people who they will have the best home setting. They will have money within the house. They will have opportunities.
Have
They will
everything laid right before them perfectly.
and still choose the wrong thing.
Mhm.
That's just life. Some people are like that,
Yes.
and we cannot stop those people. How we can't change those people's course of life because it's not in us. People still have to make their own decisions.
Choices. Everything comes down to choice.
Exactly. But then there are people who really the options that they see are skewed. It's like they have blinders on because they've been blinded for so long.
Mhm.
So when you tell them you have other possibilities, it's like they can't see them. You might see them because you have the privilege to see them. You see that person as a talented person, but they don't see it. So I think it's really important that we find a way to keep that hope and keep that aspiration alive within young people. But that takes active efforts from early throughout the school system, within communities,
Mhm.
and it's very difficult to do that on a continuous basis. And we can't just rely on government. Yes, government can contribute, but we do rely, once again,
Non-profit organizations.
yeah, and people within our communities, so many people are there and they're providing those mentorship roles, and they're not necessarily, you might not think of them as, they're not the parliamentarian,
Mhm.
they might not be the chairperson of an organization, but they are maybe having lessons, and they might be having lessons for $5.
All free.
Yeah.
Sometimes parents also put a lot of pressure on children,
Mhm.
where you have to be a doctor or you have to be this particular
Profession.
and where the child might literally be an artist, but they say you can't make money from art.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, why not?
but they don't
Yeah.
know. You know,
Yeah.
and they only see it as you got in order to be. I mean, if we look at it, there was a time where you couldn't be a musician, you couldn't be a singer. If you wanted to be a singer, just know you'd be struggling, right? And then Rihanna came, and that opened me as like, oh no, I love music, and she gave me a possibility that I could make money, a lot of money from what I love, right?
Mhm.
And I just think people also just try to pin the child in one category. You have to fit this what I want you to be, and then the child feel pressured and like, I am not that, so maybe I'm not going to be successful.
Mhm.
And they don't know the other options. All they see, like if they watch on YouTube, or this person makes money from drugs, right? So if I can't be a doctor, I can't be a lawyer. I don't feel smart enough. This might be the only avenue that I can make money. And if the parent only wants the child to be in those professions because they want money, child say, look what we made this week, look what we made today.
Mhm.
They're satisfied,
Yeah.
right? And that could also be one of the reasons why a child might grow up and just decide, well, I can't be this profession, I can't be that.
I can't be what mommy and daddy wants me to be.
Yeah, I can't be what mommy and daddy wants me to be. I can't make that. I can't get money that way, but I can get money this way.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the problems.
So we as parents need to take more time to figure out what is best for our children instead of what is best for us.
Yeah.
So we spoke about trauma earlier, and my question is, why is there a stigma in the Black community when it comes to mental health, getting counseling? Why don't we deal with our trauma effectively?
I don't think anybody, not even our parents, really think that they even have trauma. Yeah. So I think we first have to think about, do people realize they have trauma?
Yeah.
Like,
Clearly we do.
Sometimes they think that it's just us being weak, though. Our generation being weak for acknowledging that I have been through this traumatic experience and now I'm suffering because of it. Because some people think, that everybody goes through things, toughen up and go through it. But it's really not that easy. Like, so many people are living with long-term trauma.
Mhm.
They've just buried it so much. They think that they're doing well, and then you're like, you are
Not doing so well.
and they think they're good.
Mhm.
But it's so much unresolved trauma, and then sometimes they pass that on to the next generation, and now you have trauma that you didn't even go through, and you don't even know what the root of it is. So you're traumatized over something that never happened to you. So how do you even backtrack that?
Mhm.
You can't. If you went through it, you can easily say, you know what, I went through this, and this is where this pain started. But when the trauma has been instilled in you since you were a baby,
Mhm.
and you have been taught this fear is so ingrained in you, it takes such deep work to fix that. It's hard. And I think also Black people tend to not want people in the business, and saying no and telling your whole life story and all your business to a therapist it's threatening to a lot of people. I mean, I might sit down and do it, but a lot of older people are not willing to even be open to that.
So what can we do to encourage persons to get the help that they need?
Well, I think that, sure, how is it beneficial?
Okay.
If they realize that speaking their problem is beneficial, then they may, because maybe they have went through like a time where they told somebody what they went through and that person just laughed. Oh, thank you. And that's another set of trauma in their head. I can't tell nobody. I won't pay nobody to tell them about that, just for them to laugh at me and spread that.
So we need to create a safe environment where they can sit down and speak without being judged.
Yeah, I think to begin, if I had to say a solution to that, we could probably just begin from young. It might be harder for somebody that may be older.
Mm-hmm.
We could begin from young, where like maybe after school or during break or something, where a guidance counselor talk to the children themselves and say, it's okay, we could just tell me how was your day, because sometimes a child might not even hear how was your day.
Yeah, it's true. Know? But the reality is most schools don't have guidance counselors anymore. So that support is not in the schools like before.
Yeah. I mean, I also support the idea of social workers in schools.
Yeah.
Because guidance counselors can only manage issues that happen in school.
Mm-hmm.
Social workers have the option to see an issue and then take it to the home.
Okay.
So the guidance counselor is so limited in their capacity. So when you have, but then that takes money, and no, it's up to now. Social workers have been begging for this. Give them the chance to get into the schools so that they can access the children, so that they can then go into the communities and fix these issues. But it's really tough. It takes systematic change, and not just systematic change, but it's monetary. And to pay social workers to be in schools, there are a lot of people that will not do that, because you have social workers, you have your fleet of social workers who exist within the child care board and the clinics and different areas.
Yeah.
But then you also now have to think, you can't take those from there because they're serving the community in that capacity.
So we need more.
We need more. And that's how many primary schools do we have in Barbados, and secondary schools. So then you think about paying people to work in all of those. It's worth it. I'm not saying that it's not worth it, but it is a lot. Mm-hmm. And then there are going to be parents that are not going to allow they're going to be very annoyed that their children talk about issues.
But we have to find a way to get them from thinking that it is problematic and get them to thinking that you'll find a solution for their child.
Yeah, I think, okay, so there's a massive stigma as it relates to mental illness and the potential of mental illness. I'm going to talk about, I keep talking about myself. That's okay. We here having a conversation.
Yeah.
So I remember during the pandemic, we had this, I don't know if y'all knew that there was an app called Clubhouse.
No, never heard of it.
So there's an app called Clubhouse, and during the pandemic, when everybody was locked down, we would go onto this app and we would sit down and just talk. Okay. You would go into a room and you could just sit down and have a conversation with people. And it allowed us to have that socialization during the pandemic where we were stuck inside by ourselves. And I remember there was this room on Sunday mornings. I can't remember, it was goals, gratitudes, and affirmations. And we would get in there and we would talk about how our week went, our goals for the week, what we're grateful for, and a few affirmations that we're going to carry through the week.
Okay.
And I remember this day I just felt particularly vulnerable. And those are people that I knew for a very long time. Some people I knew for over 10 years. And I was talking about my experience with mental illness. And I talk very openly about it. I've never talked on like a big platform about it. I've promised to, because I think it's important that people destigmatize it through personal experience. But I personally have experienced depression, and not on a small scale. I have experienced major depression. And I remember I spoke very openly, and I got emotional. I cried. But I am a person, I cry.
I think we all do at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, but I cry at many points. That's just me as a person.
We are emotional beings.
Yeah. I think I'm a little bit further, but it's okay. It doesn't make me weak. I promise you, I am a very tough person, right? But I'm talking about it because it is a very deep thing, and being able to speak out loud about it, there is a level of vulnerability, and with that vulnerability sometimes comes emotion. So I spoke very openly about my struggles with depression and anxiety, and this has been something that it's been 11 years that I've been dealing with it. And I knew when I noticed I was experiencing it. I remember the first day that I realized I was at school, and I told my mom, I can't do this anymore with me. And I told her, I'm gonna catch the bus and come home. I'm gonna come to your office though, because I need to talk to you. And I spoke to her, and I told her I need to take a break. Like I can't do this anymore. Like I'm feeling sick, but I know I'm not sick. Like I'm having physical manifestations of sickness, but I'm okay. Like, I'm not physically sick. And I knew that it was depression. And it didn't get better. It got worse.
Okay.
And I remember I saw psychologists and psychiatrists, and it was a struggle. And the reality is that it is so overwhelming on you, and it's hard for other people to understand what you're actually experiencing, because, and I'm glad it is, because I'm so serious. I don't wish this on my worst enemy. It's not that you feel sad. You don't. You hardly ever feel sad.
Just feel overwhelmed.
You feel overwhelmed because it is. I say it like this. It is. You are fighting an enemy that lives inside your brain, but that enemy has all of your strengths. It knows your strengths. It has the same strengths as you. But you get tired, and it does not.
Yes.
So when you feel like, oh goodness, I could take a little break, that starts to get you.
Yeah.
And just that moment where you're constantly wrestling with it, and the slightest slip up that you have, it will cause you to crash. And with things like major depressive disorder, that crash is not a week. That crash is a progressive period of months. And you may be in work, and people think you're good, and you smiling, and you go and you talk to everybody like normal, and you come home, and you literally just lay there, and you're just like, I just need to go to sleep. And you just want to sleep. And eventually, sleep is the only time that you get peace.
Yeah, because your mind is closed off.
Exactly. But then it robs you of sleep too, because it's all exactly. So then you have issues. It is a continuous cycle, and it's hard. I didn't tell my mom how bad it was until the psychiatrist told me, I think you should have a conversation with her. Let her know how bad it is, because you don't want for something to happen. And she meant self-harm.
Yeah.
And she'd be surprised and think, oh my goodness, like, how did I miss this? And that is why a lot of people do end up harming and unaliving themselves. And people are like, I don't know where this came from, because you do everything in your power to maintain the facade, to keep everybody thinking you're okay.
You're masking all your problems.
Exactly.
I also had dealt with depression, especially when I was a teenager. As I mentioned, I dealt with a lot of that. That time the month was terrible for me. And also I was a very, very shy person. I didn't really have a lot of friends, and kind of
isolated.
Had a lot of trauma as well. And as a teenager, I was like, I don't see why I should be here. Like, I didn't even know what I want to do when I grew up. And I was just sad. I used to cry every day. And I know Terry will have a different view in terms of religion, but for me, that was how I got into Christianity, because I wasn't raised in the church. But that's when I heard a voice. Like, I really felt that particular day, like, I just do not want to be here. And it was just thinking about ways and stuff like that to go. And I literally heard a voice saying, like, just give it 10 more years, just live your life, but at least me. And in my mind, I was thinking that me meant God.
Yeah.
And I just said, all right, I would try a little bit. I just hope that something, just a little sign that at least something in my life will be better. I just need at least that. And that day, certain things started that I was dealing with starting to got a little better. And I just say, all right, we'll hold on a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what helped me at that time. But it's something that people aren't going to tell you that I cry every day.
Yeah.
You know?
But I think it's important that we have these conversations because if I remember when I told the people in the chat in the little chat room, I remember people that I knew for a very long time were like, "Tara, you made me cry this morning," and some people were like, "I would have never believed that," and I remember somebody said, "You made me realize that I may be going through this the same way."
thing.
Maybe not at the level that I was going through because mine was pre-COVID, you know. But COVID did cause people to go through situational depression, and that needed help as well. And I remember a lady came back 2 weeks later and said she had a situation where somebody else had attempted to unalive themselves, and she thought, like in her natural state, she would have thought, "Why would you do this?" Like she automatically was like, "Why would they do this?" And she remembered the conversation that we had. And she said that perspective gave her the patience to just sit down and listen to what that person was going through. And that's why I think is really important that it's a little hypocritical because, as I said, I have not had this conversation. I have promised for years to have the conversation publicly and not just share how depression impacts your life, but like, how do you survive with it? Because it kills so many people every single year. It's one of the biggest killers, you know? I survived that. How am I surviving this? Why am I surviving this? And showing people that there is a good life, even if you are suffering at some point, that suffering is temporary. It's going to pass. Life is not going to be a cakewalk.
It never will be.
You can do different things, you know. There are ways that you can step away from the things that drain you. There are ways that you can focus on the things that will pour into you. Sometimes you don't even want to live for yourself, but you can live for other people. And it sounds weird, but knowing that having pets, knowing that nobody's gonna love my dog like how I do, that is one thing you survive for. My cat would cry. Like I feel like I had a cat that literally went into depression and died because I moved. I traveled and he just ran away. He ran away and died. And those are things that I think about. I cannot allow the people and the animals and even my garden to go.
Yeah, they need you.
I go. I have to put in the effort and I have to fight every single day. So sometimes it's not about you. You don't survive for you. You
survive for others.
Survive for other people. So having a conversation is really important. You know?
All right, let's move on to government corruption. So the term corruption is defined as the abuse of entrusted power, the personal or private gain. Dishonest activities commonly engaged in include bribery, embezzlement, and the hiring or advancement of certain people for private or political gain. Political corruption may come in the form of manipulating policies, instituting rules and procedures, influencing the allocation of funding or other resources, or otherwise abusing a position of authority to increase or maintain the individual's power, status, or wealth. So as the bearers of life and stewards of community values, what unique qualities do you believe women bring to leadership roles that could help root out corruption and foster transparent governance?
Well, I think it's very difficult to begin with. Corruption really, with that definition of corruption is the culture of politics universally, if you're being honest.
You don't think that there's a way for politics to be clean,
there is
full of integrity?
But let's be honest, it's not. In order for you to get in order for most people to get certain places, they will make deals with people who have their own personal interests, and it will impact social policies. Um, it makes it very difficult because for persons who genuinely care about people, care about making change within society, it deters them from being in political spaces, and that then lends to more corruption because the right people are in power. So it is. I do think we can. It's not impossible, but ultimately it requires a person or people who are willing to go against the status quo. But I think that is something that tends to happen mostly with women. Women are really, if a woman sets her mind that this ain't what she's doing,
she's not gonna do it.
they're not gonna changing her. Like if we really look at the women who have been heavy hitters in politics, sometimes they're not the most liked people. Look at people like Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
She was not liked, especially men. Men typically don't even like women in politics.
Right. It's seen as the male flu. So why don't men like women in politics?
I think women in politics just have a generally difficult time anyway. People have this expectation of women, and to succeed in politics, you have to kind of step out of those boundaries. But the reality is that people have these strict rules on women to fall into this specific lane. There are very specific ranges that women can be in. You really can't be too soft, because not only will you not get things done, but people don't think you can get things done, so they won't elect you. But you can't be too hard because they see you as masculine.
Too masculine.
And men don't like masculine women, apparently. And they come over as aggressive to people. But then it's like, do you not want somebody who's a little bit harsher sometimes fighting for your rights? You can't be ugly because people don't like ugly women, apparently. I'm being very frank because these are the truth. That people will aggressively attack women that they do not find attractive, especially men. Men dismiss women who they don't find attractive. So you're not gonna get votes. Like, but then if you're too pretty, they don't take you seriously. There's a very fine line that you have to walk.
So what is that balance? What is that balance?
I don't even believe in balance anymore. I think being aggressively yourself, because we look at
honestly,
for instance. Later.
Yeah, she does a bully.
She's not like she does. She literally said, "I'm not going to satisfy any of the roles that you want to put me in." She is known to be what people see as more masculine.
Yes, masculine.
She doesn't conform to societal expectations of femininity. She doesn't do a full face of makeup. And I say this with a full, like, as a person who tends to lean towards a more feminine presentation. But I think that you have to figure out who you are, because people are drawn to authenticity and they don't afford women that. But you have to be so firm in who you are as a person and know why you are doing it, know what your goals are, who your goals are for. It's a hard experience as a woman in politics. It's very, very difficult, and people will try to destroy you at every step. But I do think that because of the unique experience of women and experiencing life in the workplace and in society, we do have the strength within ourselves to be able to fight against the expectations and to push for those goals that we want to achieve. So
you don't think that we are equipped to root out all the corruption that's currently there?
As women?
Yeah, as women.
I think, all right, again, just go back to what politics is. And I think that this is what people forget what politics. I think that this is what people forget what politics is about people. And people just want to know that you can represent them.
Their interests.
Yes.
Yes.
They want to know that you can handle, you got a tough skin and you can handle whatever somebody throws at you. And they also want to know that you know their problems and you're capable of solving their problems.
So would you say that it just comes down to caring, having empathy, compassion, those
And
kind of
there
things?
are women that they're not politicians,
Mm-hmm.
but they care about people and they do their best. They do what they can to support their people. But unfortunately, those aren't the ones that are going to run.
Why not? Why do we have to put it in a box? Why can't they run?
It's their choice, you know. I believe if I don't want to, let me see. There are women that I think really could make good politicians and even leaders.
Mm-hmm.
However, they also know what they're up against. They know that by putting themselves in that position, it could mean harm on their family. Like their family, they have to think about their children as well.
It is a vicious
So
profession.
I think that's one of the reasons why more women may not be in politics, just because of their family.
Mm-hmm.
And then as well, people may not elect a woman just because they don't know if she's strong enough to handle whatever it is. And that's why at least that's why I think people choose men. And then, but the thing is, if all of them are men, they're not looking at necessarily all the issues that women go through.
Mm-hmm.
And we as women, there's certain problems that I believe have been solved if more women were in politics, if more women were in government. But yeah, we have to deal with the consequence.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess saying to anybody out there that would just need a little encouragement and wondering if they should run, please. If you are a woman, please try. If you know that you are passionate and you speak well and you want to do well for your constituency, neighborhood, children, that just try it. Yeah. Because we need you. We need you. There's certain problems that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
But that's my take on that. But
Okay. Let's talk about cost of living. There's no doubt that right now cost of living is way too high. You have high electricity bills, high fuel costs, multiple taxes, low minimum wage, high food bills. So the lower class in society is always that first class that is always, affected by high cost of living. They have struggles with poverty, unemployment, lack of resources. So this brings us to community-based economic development, developing from the bottom up instead of the top down. This focuses on small businesses, entrepreneurship, community innovation, which creates jobs and retain wealth within the community. So given the challenges of rising living costs, in what ways can the inherent strengths of women, such as resilience, community organizations, and empathy help formulate grassroots economic solutions that support families and communities?
let me go. Okay. I could only think about this like if I was giving advice to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
In what ways can women help in terms of the cost of living?
Yeah, like if you're seeing an issue in your community, if you're seeing families struggling, what would you implement within that community to foster economic growth? Encourage persons into entrepreneurship, starting their own business, that kind of stuff.
So in terms of someone who may be struggling I would look and see what skills they have that they could Like if they can do here,
Mm-hmm.
if that's a skill, how can you make a little extra money? If they have land, can you grow crops? Can you grow food to help yourself and your family? Can you also grow things to sell as well to
Yeah.
at least make a little income? And it may be placed on some people's hearts, and I know some people do this as well if they want to help somebody who, if your next door neighbor might be struggling, can they cook them a meal?
Mm-hmm.
Even something like that could help. I think we could help each other in the community itself to, especially in these kind of times, not everybody can afford the a bag of groceries, right?
Yeah.
So if we help one another, I think that it will at least help a bit, as well as somebody may not have land, but another person may have land. And if they are okay with giving some of their crops to their neighbor, it could help somebody.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think when we were in school, we learned about the way that Native Americans live, and we learned about the way that Africans live pre-colonization and pre-slavery. And one of the ways that you would have a society is that I may be a farmer, you may raise animals, you may hunt, everybody has a specific skill, but you take what you need. It's not a let me take this much and put down and grab as much as I can. It's not that kind of living. It is, do I need this? My experience is a little bit different to some persons. I live in a close knit community in St. John, and I always tell people ask me why I love St. John so much. It really is the community, because I am probably not gonna be hungry. Somebody has something. There's breadfruit trees. Somebody got sweet potato growing, cassava. Somebody is going to give you something, and you're going to give your neighbor something. And we live in a community where we don't necessarily, if we don't have it, there is going to be a way to achieve it. But then that's a bottom up, but we also deal with it top down. And I don't know if y'all remember years ago, um, David Esway would have it was a very popular audio that went around in a country like Barbados that that could grow lettuce, potatoes, and all these things. He was talking about the import bill and why the import bill was so high when we have such a massive potential for agriculture, and we see it consistently here where they're taking agricultural lands and using it for homes. Here's the thing: when you take agricultural lands, which is agricultural land because it is deep earth, like you dig, you gotta dig deep to touch rock, and it's good fertile land, and you go and you put a housing development on it, and you dig up all that beautiful soil that God put there, and you put marl in there to pack it down. It's now infertile. It will never come back. It will literally never come back. It's now a concrete jungle. And it continues to demonstrate a lack of vision and poor choices for sustainable development within a country. If we continue to do this, especially in a world like we're living in right now, there are about 40 million wars on the cusp of breaking into World War III. What's gonna happen when exactly, people are going to start to hoard resources, and we're gonna see these issues. Right now we're gonna see issues. There's a trade war going on with America and everybody, and they've deported so many persons who are illegal aliens, but those illegal aliens were fueling their agricultural economy, and now they don't have workers. So that means that crops are dying. They're not being harvested on time, which means that there's very quickly there's going to be a lack of the produce on the market. You are seeing wars in areas like in Palestine is one of the largest producers of olives. You see issues in Ukraine where wheat and that's pretty big.
Yeah.
That's bread, pasta, almost everything. In Africa, in Congo, Africa's pretty much the gold mine, which is why everybody wants to be there, and there's always conflict. But there's so many resources that should a major war that extends beyond those boundaries, because they're going to affect them. But once they start to impact other territories, we're going to see resources being hoarded, or not even just resources being hoarded, but the passage is going to be limited. What are we going to do when we can't get potatoes and wheat, and we can't get strawberries because we don't grow them here? What's going to happen then when we have so many things, but not on a large scale but not on large scales that will support an entire market? You can grow some for you, but ultimately there's no reason why our import bill should be so high and why we should be so dependent on imports. Like it is fine to import things. There are things that we like as luxury items. That's beautiful. Like yes, we want to have those things, but should they not be available? Are we able to say that we can rely on the mango trees and the daunch trees? Can we say that we have fields galore of potatoes and cassava and onions and all these things that can satisfy our diets? We are failing our country, and we are failing to prepare for the future by continuously destroying our agricultural potential. And that is going to prove to be detrimental to the people of Barbados if we continue this way. And I suspect that it's going to be a lot sooner than we think it will be.
Honestly, during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
that should have shown us that we cannot rely only on imported goods, right? That should have then shown us that, we need more agriculture. And that could have solved a lot of that food cost, a lot of our bills, a lot of our families will be eating healthier.
So do you think that we need a national campaign encouraging all households start having gardens?
I think that could work. Start with just like a herb garden. That would be nice if people would feel the confidence, because growing is hard. I started my garden and I got like one tomato so far. But I felt so good about that tomato.
Yeah.
But you start teaching people the fundamentals of growing a little bit here. And even if we don't have the food crisis, we do have, at least we can say that, okay, I saved $20 this week, and that $20 will go towards something else. Because I mean, just to feed yourself, it can become very expensive. So cutting those pennies wherever you can is really important. But I just want the powers that be to protect our people as well.
People and
There's a myth that persons aren't interested in getting involved in agriculture. So how do you combat that?
I'm still trying to figure out where that myth is, because now if I could get the land that I want, I will.
I'd be very happy. So I don't know who out there thinking that.
I do think though that came from like slavery though. Like the idea of working the fields, I think that goes back to like the embedded trauma that we feel. Yeah.
The mud, putting my hands in the mud, that's somebody do that.
Yeah, and it feels like hard work, like really, really hard work, which it is. It is really hard work. But I guarantee though,
your own crop is not that you working for nothing.
Yeah.
And then you can't even taste what you're working for. It's your crop.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why somebody. I mean, I guess not everybody
enjoys
it.
But here's the thing: our generation is different. Okay, we've become so disenchanted with the. Yeah. We I think too, we don't like to listen to people. Like, being told what to do is not something that we're very fond. Some of us are very fond of. So there are many of us who will actively say, I'm gonna go into agriculture. Yes, we are a little lazy, but I mean, I'd rather work for myself and spend 12 hours outside in the sun and see the progress than to go and work 8 hours for somebody else. That's me personally. Everybody's not like that, and I'm not saying everybody should be like that, but it is something that I'm willing to do, and I know many young people who are willing to do it. It's just getting started because we don't have the land. Land is expensive. We don't necessarily know how to do it because there's a generation between there where our grandparents might have grown up and everybody had their own garden, but the generation in between might not have had that. And then we didn't learn that from them. So now we kind of learning from scratch when they had so much knowledge. I mean, I'm blessed to be, yeah. And I also have four generations of women in my family, in my house. So my great grandmother was 107 and she worked on plantations. So, no, she's not working like that anymore. But she's still alive and she's still knowledgeable and she still talks about these things. So I have the advantage of saying, "Oh, I have knowledge." She knows how to grow food. She knows how to survive off the land because they didn't really have access to. They had a bed. Exactly. They were cutting grass and putting it on the roof to dry and stuffing the bed with it, and that was their bed. They know how to survive off the land.
And there's also things that they used to, like, as I mentioned, castor oil, they would have known, like, the castor leaf, help with fever and all these different things.
Some cooling tea. Absolutely
not. Yes. I actually knew that it did help me. So, and the thing is, I did learn that from my mother, who learned that from her grandmother. But I think the unfortunate part is that there's certain things that is not being passed down.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's because it's not just food; it's actually medication.
Yeah.
That we call our grass or whatever.
Yeah.
And
it's just that you pass and you don't even know what searching bush look like. But
I actually don't even know you.
Yeah, but
I don't know the calf.
Exactly. So, but that's things that they would know, and they would know the bush tea. They would know how to make cooling tea on an evening, and that's how they would have survived. But you know who I admire for maintaining those practices is the Rastafarian community, and I think that we could really learn from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they're very willing to teach us. I've seen them be very willing to teach the community how to survive without following Western medicine, because I don't want to call it traditional medicine, because the traditional medicine is and then you think about it, these medicines that we take are synthesized versions of the yeah, and I find it so fascinating that we have gone. Of course, you can't deplete the populations, so you synthesizing some medications is good because it keeps the plants alive. People have a habit of overconsumption, but learning where these things came from and how to actually survive in the environment that God gave us without destroying it, that has now become a lost art. And I'm really hoping that we as a generation can pull it back and find a balance between the technology now and the exactly. Yeah.
Ethical women. So women are seen as the moral compass of the family structure. They teach the importance of honesty, empathy, respect, and kindness. Women nurture the development of morally upright individuals, fostering harmonious family dynamics and imparting essential life lessons. So it's concerns about a culture of moral always in opposition with the mental power. How can the traditionally nurturing roles of women lead to a broader societal shift towards ethics, responsibility, and community?
I don't think that's I think that it almost becomes a situation where we put too much on the backs of women though. It is ultimately everyone's responsibility. So while women may teach, there may be some things that are specifically taught. But yeah, and you have to, as I was saying earlier, everybody has to play their part in order for it to work. So I can't teach you one thing and you not learn another thing from another parent, because if my capacity is I teach you empathy, but you don't learn things like survival and this is just stereotypical things that we associate with the genders. But I mean, either could teach. I'm just saying, if I have the capacity to teach you one specific lesson or frame things from one side, and you're not getting the other side, it creates a shift in balance. Yeah, and I'm like, you watch Mulan?
No, I haven't watched.
So in Mulan 2, the first song is talking about balance. You know, it says like a rock I'm hard, but like a cloud I'm soft, like bamboo I bend in the wind.
Yeah.
And it's talking about how in order to be a strong warrior, you have to not only be harsh and hard and be able to fight, but you also have to be fluid enough to to move through life. And I think that's a perfect balance of what people view as stereotypically masculine versus feminine roles. Each person, you can't be all feminine, you can't be all masculine. There's a balance
Of both of them. And if you have one person teaching you what we see as those softer skills that make us more flexible, then we have to have someone else teaching us the firmer ones that teach us how to draw lines, how to establish boundaries, how to be firm without being cruel.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates a morally sound person who's not only able to say, this is who I am and you can't change me, but is also the person that can say, you can't change me,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not gonna be a cruel person to you just because I'm different to you,
Yeah.
or just because I see things in a different way than you do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that people who embody different characteristics contribute, but that falls back to it takes a village.
Yeah, definitely.
One person can't do it,
Yeah.
and mothers
Mm-hmm.
are forced to do it.
They're doing too
alone.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
In this moral decay, I think that the problem is what exactly are morals.
What do you think morals are?
But it's not for me to think. I could think one thing, you think one thing,
True.
Tyrion thinks another thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, right, I could say the reason why children may be more disrespectful is because they're not being lashed more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But somebody else says you can't lash a child, that's inhumane.
Yeah,
You
too harsh.
giving them trauma,
Yeah.
that's abuse. But then they could say, but look in the past, they didn't have this issue before.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly is right and wrong? I just think that's just one of them. So everybody has their version of right and wrong morals. And I think, especially in the coming generation, they build their morals on social media.
Yeah.
And what one country thinks is right, they're adopting into this country because we didn't have a lot of crime. It might seem more attractive to make money this way, and it seems okay in this country. But when you apply it to the Bajan culture now,
Mm-hmm.
it changes what we experienced before.
Okay.
So first we have to figure out and stick with what
Our culture is.
our culture is,
Mm-hmm.
what we want our morals to be for our children. And then I think we could solve a bit of the problem, because there's still social media that could influence the next generation, right? But yeah, I feel like it's true that we just look at how can women do this, how can women really change their children, but really and truly, it does take a village. They need the father, they need
grandmother.
the grandmothers, they also need men, and we need to hear their perspective, because if it's only women, we only giving our perspective on how to raise the child, but we're not getting, if it's just a single family, if a single parent home, if it's just a mother, if it's just the mother, this is the female perspective, you're not getting the male perspective.
Yeah. You know what I wanted to ask you was, well, not necessarily ask you. I've had conversations with this outside of this setting, but the idea that the Eurocentric
version of the family is promoted consistently. But while we live in a country where we have obviously a European influence because of colonialism, but we still are. Everybody is not. I mean, it's about 1992% Black majority country. There are plenty other races here, but generally, I think that sometimes we've been pulled so far away from Afrocentric versions of the family, and like I see a lot of people aspiring to like the nuclear family, and just being a mom, a dad, and the kids in the house. And our society has never really existed like that. We have multi-generational families that don't necessarily fit that stereotypical experience, you know. We have I grew as I said, I didn't go to nursery. I think I went for like 3 days, and I was taken out of nursery from a bad experience. But I was I was taken care of until I could go to school. My great grandmother took care of me. She was like 80, in her 80s at the time. And I had that experience where being in the home with her, I didn't have that nuclear family dynamic. I had my grandparents there. My parents were both involved. My aunts, uncles. I had such a network where I never lacked
for anything because I had so many different people. I knew that if one person wasn't able to fill the role, somebody else is gonna fill it. And there's so much knowledge that comes from that. And I think in our society where we're sometimes people try so much to embody something that doesn't come naturally to us that we are losing touch of who we are as a people. And then we look at African society, they don't live like that. They don't live in a nuclear system. I think it's a really Western thought, because you look at a Middle Eastern family, they don't live like that. You look at an Asian family, they typically don't, well, historically, they don't live like that. There always is someone else in the home to provide a level of support.
Okay.
So we, in an effort to preserve our own morals as a society, we have to really sit down and think what has worked for our people in the past and what are we looking to achieve in the future. It's not necessarily saying you guys have to live with parents, but still having the constant interaction where they can provide guidance and provide support is very helpful to a lot of people.
Okay. So we're moving on to women's leadership in policy. So in recent years, women have increasingly assumed positions of leadership in various sectors, including politics, business, and nonprofits. This rise in female leadership has brought about positive changes in ethical governance. Studies have shown that women in leadership positions tend to prioritize transparency, inclusivity, and ethical decision making. Their ability to empathize and consider diverse perspectives has helped create more equitable and morally conscious organizations and governments. Women have long been seen as the heart of the family and community. How can this central role be harnessed in policymaking to directly address issues like crime, corruption, and economic stability?
Well, as I was saying a little bit earlier, they're mostly men in politics. Therefore, they're not necessarily seeing what women may be going through. And I just think that there should be both male and female in politics, right? So that the woman could give her perspective on making the policies.
Okay, so as a woman, you're looking at when you look at the current situation in crime, the current situation in corruption, and the current situation in the economic instability, if you were a policymaker, is there anything that you see that needs changing?
Oh, God, think a little bit.
No problem.
I do think that sometimes when policies are made, they are very narrow in their scope. So that's something that I think that women offer that sometimes, it's not and when I say women and I say men, it's just a general thing because there are men who offer a different perspective. Anyone can have this perspective, but I think generally you see women having a little bit more of a cohesive idea of what's happening. So policies that women usually think about it can be a lot more empathetic. And what that means is I may not necessarily experience a specific struggle, but if I am making a policy and I am observing, I'm making good money, I can afford groceries when the month comes. My kids can go to nursery or daycare. I might have a nanny. That might be my level of privilege. But I also see that there are women out there who have to leave their children at home and can't afford to take their children to nursery. Granted, we have government nurseries here, but I'm just saying, there are people who can't afford certain things. And I see people who may have to give their children a snack as a breakfast item, and then their only guaranteed meal is to go to school meals. So I'm thinking in my policy making to include those people, because even though I don't experience the struggle, I need those things to be provided for. I need to make sure if I'm creating policies that impact gynecological care, I need to think for the woman who literally cannot afford to have another child. I can't go out there and say, I don't believe that abortion is right and I'm going to make it illegal. Or I don't think that you should take birth control, because that one extra child might be life or death for somebody else. The perspective, because also the burden of society often falls on women's shoulders. So you have financial burdens. Women oftentimes feel it. People don't think of it that much. Men, yes, a lot of times men's mental health really decline because of financial issues. But women tend to be the bearers of the burden financially. Women tend to be the ones that figure out how to make it work for the kids, how to split $10
5 different ways.
Exactly. How do I know that I don't have the money to pay for the groceries, but how am I going to make it work that I have children to feed for the next 5 days? Because if I don't, children are gonna look at me like, "Mommy, I'm hungry," and that's what you're gonna have to deal with. So our thought process tends to be a little bit more inclusive for people, and I think that's what we offer to policy making, creating cohesive plans that don't just help one sector of people. It is a universal policy. Of course, there are going to be people who don't fall within that. There are always outliers, but they tend to have a little bit of a wider reach and benefit more people, inclusive of men. Because if we think about like feminism, the feminist movement, as much as radical feminism is not something I support, I think it's way too far.
Yeah, too far.
Too far. But the feminist movement got men the right to say that I am suffering mentally. That wasn't men fighting for men's right. That was women saying, y'all suffering and we see you. We don't want y'all to suffer. Women fought for paternity leave. Women fought for a lot of things, proper health care, the right for men to say that, hey, I'm experiencing this problem. How many times men just go to the doctor?
Hardly.
Because most of the times when you see like men, a lot of men just
They don't like the doctor. Yeah.
and the reason why, because you suffering for the whole time and you refuse to go to the doctor. Because women are seeing these things. So when you see women making policies, they think about all of these things, all the little details that go into it. Yeah. And you think, how am I going to make sure everybody is hit with this policy and everybody benefits from it? And I think that's the beautiful thing that women offer to policy making. That I'm not saying that men don't offer it. Sometimes they do.
Just offering a different perspective.
Yeah.
As I was saying, I believe that the resurgence, you were saying that the cramp will probably not, women may not even know what cramp is because just take a little saying and I'm good.
I think if men experience it, you see like the period cramp stimulator. Like they actually don't realize how painful it is.
Right, this is just a joke, but if every man had to go on that and they had to put that on their bodies for at least 24 hours to experience a period for one day, I think that certain policies will be made.
Yeah, for sure. Even like they don't give us. I'm not sure. Other than epidurals, like we don't do like the gas here for birth. I've never had a baby. So
No, just epidural. Yeah.
Yeah, and an epidural comes with.
And it does not help. Trust me, it does not help.
So you have this extremely painful thing, and a man is gonna sit down in a room and twiddle his thumbs and it's
And some even faint. Not like that.
Women are like delivering a child and then they have a child and the hormones hit them and in a month they're like, I have another one.
Let's have another. Yeah.
Like men, I guarantee if men had to go through it would be a completely different thing. Even some of the basic procedures, like I don't know if y'all see the conversation around the speculum.
No.
I don't know. I'm gonna break the fourth wall. I don't know what a speculum is.
No.
So anybody that doesn't know, Google it. And I just want it to be clear. It looks like a torture device, but every woman knows what a speculum is. Every woman after they hit 21 or so should exactly. They know what a speculum is. And it is a traumatizing experience to have a speculum used on you for the first time because it is very uncomfortable. And certain procedures are very uncomfortable. Certain routine procedures.
Yes.
Even like IUD insertion, which is very common these days. They don't even give you medication for it.
Really?
No. And they're literally forcing something through your cervix. And many male doctors will literally tell you, it'll be overshot and just a little pressure. pressure. It's not pressure. It's like it's pain at like the deepest core of your existence. But they don't understand it because they can't relate it to anything, and they will never be able to relate it to anything because they don't go through that pain. Probably the closest thing to that pain would be if they had a catheter inserted without medicine. Like, and
See, I think you should just put that in perspective. Would you like something going up there?
but they don't even have they don't have the frame of reference. And it's so crazy to me because we have it and we can relate to each other. We can have these conversations amongst each other. We can also say, oh, I understand for men that these particular things are issues and we don't want you to suffer, but we just think of things so comprehensively. We don't think about things as we just experience this and we don't want us to suffer. We don't want everybody to suffer.
It's true. Well, we had a recent announcement where maternity leave was increased by 2 weeks. I still think it's inefficient. What would you say would be the ideal amount of time a woman needs to be here? Yes.
I was saying here too. At least when the child could. Honestly, I would say at least when the child could like walk a little bit, just talk a little bit. That's about a year, right?
Yeah. Probably about between 6 to 8 months. Yeah.
So that when you gotta go back to work and then you have to put your child into nursery, at least they could say something, they could I don't want to put this personal thing, but I had a little baby cousin that had died because I think it was 4 months. He had died because he was choking on his vomit.
Oh.
So because I know that I when I do get children, I want at least a year when they could, move.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about did the caretaker check on the child. I just in my mind I was always thinking at least I want to make sure I raise enough for at least a year.
A full year.
But then you also think about the mother. Because you think about your child, but then you also think about the mother. How do you really recover from that in 3 months? Especially if you have something like a C-section, you might have had some kind of complications, like some kind of, like if you have gestational diabetes, your body recovers from that. Pre-eclampsia has become increasingly common, and it's startling how many women are dying from it. And most women who have pre-eclampsia will develop heart conditions after. And it's terrifying the way that preeclampsia happens. You might not even notice it's happening because pregnancy is painful. So the idea that you have to recover so much from childbirth, but then you also have to take care of that child and readjust to life, and things like postpartum depression, even postpartum psychosis, it's terrifying how much that's overlooked. So I do think the year would allow for not just the body to readjust to normalcy, but it allows you to get that time to bond with your child, and it allows your child to adjust to the world where they're separated from a mother and not have separation anxiety. So I just think it's better. You don't necessarily have to take the whole year. It just gives you the flexibility to do so.
Okay, it was announced that the males, the fathers, is going to be able to get 3 weeks. Okay, so do you think that 3 weeks for a father to be home with a newborn is sufficient time? Yeah.
Just because, as Terry was saying, it takes time. When the woman gives birth, she goes through not just the afterbirth, but
that 6-week period.
She's still bleeding, right? Obviously, she just gave birth. That was something hard and traumatic for her physically. She has to heal, especially if she had a C-section. 3 months. I'm sorry, not 3 months. 3 weeks. she still can't lift up anything. You know, she needs to rest.
She needs assistance. Okay. So would you say 6 weeks will be sufficient for the meal?
Shortest time, yeah. Shortest time, I would say 6 weeks. But I understand that the father still has to make money, the business still have to make money. I might push it a little further, but not 3 weeks.
Okay.
Not 3 weeks.
Tanya?
100% agree. I think 3 months.
3 months.
3 months. Yeah. It gives it. Both parents are needed. Like,
Yeah.
You both created that little person. She took point on creating that person for the last 40 weeks.
Mm.
But it's both of your responsibility to parent. That 3-month period is so intense. It's hard for women to readjust. And I think, especially because women tend to bond with babies faster.
Of course.
Yeah, because it was once a part of you. And then
There's a bond that is found from the womb.
yeah, and then through breastfeeding, oxytocin is released,
Yeah.
and you bond naturally to that baby. But men have a difficult time bonding. They have to actively put in that work. Not saying that women, because some women do struggle with bonding sometimes too, but you have more opportunities in a typical mother-child relationship to form that bond. Whereas with men, they have to actively participate in that. They have to be involved in feedings and changing, waking up and dealing with that child.
Oh, men do not wake up. Trust me, they do not.
Well,
They do not wake up, right? Yeah.
they have to.
They do not hear a thing.
They should. But
I will say though, I do know men that do
Yeah.
a better job at waking up.
Men do not wake up. So
well, I can say so, man.
Yeah, but you don't I can't speak about it because I don't have any children,
Yeah.
so I don't know the experience. But if we put them in a position where they have to, you might see a better bond developing, and that lends to a better experience raising children. So it's important that we see parenthood as a two-parent job and not just a mother job. And even if you just see it as a mother job, the mother needs support. It's based on there all the time. Your body is different. You're experiencing not just like physical challenges with your body. You could be experiencing incontinence. You could be experiencing, like, most women tear, and that process of healing stitches is very, very difficult.
For most persons, they heal between 6 and 8 weeks.
Yeah. But 6 and 8 weeks is a long time. Like, and to have such a major change in your body, if you had a C-section, that's a major surgery.
Yeah.
That went through so many layers of your body. Your abdominal wall has been separated. It takes a lot from you. So it's important that you have that support from men as well.
I forgot what I was going to say. All right. We're going to mobilizing collective action. So what examples do you see of women leading local or national movements that tackle these interconnected issues of societal decay, and how can their efforts be scaled into broader reforms?
I think generally we see, like, especially with organizations, community organizations, they're usually women are a big part of it. They're men that participate, and they do a good job, and they do it too. But women, I guess, because we do see the society as a part of our burden, we do participate actively within communities. And I think that we do a good job at rallying a team to support each other. People like to say that women hate women, but
Is that
Yeah.
true?
Oh, I do think women can be very campy when they're competitive.
Yeah.
But overall, when we say that this is what we're going forward with, when we identify a cause, right? We go for it. Like we will fight and fight and fight. And you look at like movements across the world, their women are the ones that hold them together. Like the liberation of the South African Black community. You had Nelson Mandela, but when Nelson Mandela was arrested, Winnie Mandela was the one that was holding that movement together.
Yes.
She's a beast. And I mean that in the most positive way possible. When women rally around a cause, we rally hard. And it's usually a cause that we are willing to, it's a hill we're willing to die on. And I think that tenacity, that fight, that the passion that we have for issues within our communities, it is something that's very admirable. And if more women, Gabby said earlier that, for women that feel like there are issues that we need to fight for it. Like you don't necessarily have to run. It's okay. You don't have to run. There are other organizations. You can fight. You can organize protests. You can fight in different ways. But when women decide to fight for a cause, it will be fought for. And we are stopping until it's done. So I think, unfortunately, this goes back to the putting more on women's shoulders. But at the end of the day, it kind of all falls back on us anyway, because they're blamed for everything. If society go wrong, women ain't being feminine enough. If society go right, women need to do this. It ends up being on our shoulders most of the time. And when kids struggle, we're the ones that feel it. And
the most, yeah.
Yeah. So when we have causes, even if you're not necessarily a person that likes to organize for yourself, I'd say find a cause, find a community organization, or find somebody else that is willing to organize it and fight with that cause, because you can effect change within your communities if you really just put your mind to it.
If you look at even churches, it's mostly women. If you look at any organization, yes, it might be the man running it, but you're going to always see women backing up that man. And women get very passionate, and women they see a vision and they want to see it grow. Right? So, in terms of your question, it was how women can.
What examples do you see? Like, are there any organizations that you can identify within the country that play a pivotal role for women?
Specific organization.
Yeah, like for example, have you ever heard about Jabez House?
Yes.
Yes.
I love that organization.
Yeah, they do a lot of work with persons that were prostitutes and basically get them involved in going back to school, getting an education, finding employment for them, and basically turning their lives around. So, can you identify anything in the society that you see?
Didn't want to mention too much in politics, but the Democratic League of Women, and women can join to support each other. And I honestly don't know a lot of organizations.
That's fine. Yeah.
I don't know if there's a lot out there that people are aware of. I think that may also be a part of the problem. Some women may not necessarily know where they can go.
Yeah. I would like to say, though, there's an organization that I quite like called I Am a Girl Barbados.
Yes.
And it targets young girls, I can't remember the exact age range, but from like that young teen until like they're ending school. And then a lot of the times the girls end up volunteering with the organization again,
giving
and
back,
helping with other girls, and creates a cycle. And I really love it because sometimes you see those girls and you think they will talk to you and they will have some of the most bubbly personalities, but you know that they didn't have the best chance at succeeding sometimes. But organizations like that really help within our society. And I'm very pleased with the contribution that they make. Yeah.
So are you part of any organization then that?
No, I'm not.
Not currently. I've worked alongside a few. I've worked alongside when I competed in Miss Universe Barbados in 2018, and we would have worked with I Am a Girl Barbados and had a hands-on experience with them there. Had hands-on experience with them also in 2015 when I was a parish ambassador. So it's very nice. I think I've lapsed a little bit in my community service. You know, I would love to get back involved with some organizations, especially the ones that that actively contribute to the lives of young women, and empower them to be stronger and to really effect change for themselves.
Okay. So, in conclusion, we go back to that superwoman and trying to find ways of how we can achieve being this perfect, not perfect, but this Proverb 31 woman. The woman that has faith, the faithful wife, the mother, the ones that take care of their mental health, physical and spiritual health, a woman who gives of service, a provider, a professional, homemaker, a woman who embraces her beauty and gives of her time. So being a woman is not just being a mother, but we have to find ways to embrace all aspects of womanhood.
Agree.
So thank you for having us and have a good night.